September 29th, 1982. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up early in the morning feeling ill. She took an extra-strength Tylenol to help with a runny nose and sore throat. At 7 a.m., her parents found Mary unconscious on the bathroom floor. Her parents rushed her to the hospital where Mary was pronounced dead by 9:30 a.m. Due to the inexplicable nature of her sudden death, it was presumed to be a stroke. 27-year-old Adam Janus was the next person to die after taking extra-strength Tylenol. He was the father of 2 young children and lived in Arlington Heights. The day of his death, Adam thought he was coming down with a cold. He stayed home from work that day. On his way home from picking up his children from preschool, he stopped at a Jewel grocery store and purchased a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol. After ingestion, it took only a few short minutes before Adam Janus was dead. After his death, his family gathered at his home to mourn and begin making funeral arrangements. Stanley, Adam's brother, and his wife Teresa were visiting with family when they complained of headaches and looked for a nearby remedy. In Adam's bathroom cabinet, they found the same bottle of extra-strength Tylenol. Moments after taking the capsules, Stanley and then Teresa collapsed and died. Mary Reiner was happily married to her husband Ed, and the couple had just welcomed their 4th child into the world. She used Tylenol to relieve symptoms of postpartum discomfort. She collapsed in front of her young daughter and was pronounced dead shortly after. 30-year-old Mary McFarland was working at her job at the Illinois Bell in Lombard when she felt a bad headache coming on. According to her brother Jack Eliasson, Mary took Tylenol in the back room of her workplace and was discovered dead just a few moments later. Paula Jean Prince, 35, was a flight attendant who worked for United Airlines. On the day of her death, she flew from Las Vegas to O'Hare International Airport. She purchased Tylenol from a Walgreens on her way home. Exhausted from a long flight, Paula took Tylenol to relieve the symptoms of a cold as she got ready for bed. She was found dead in her apartment, and an open bottle of Tylenol was found on her bathroom counter. While other victims of the Tylenol scare were from the suburbs of Chicago, Paula was the only victim to live in the city. In just one day, 7 innocent lives were taken. Dumbfounded by the circumstances of the deaths, both police and medical practitioners were confused as to what had happened. However, it didn't take long before one commonality between all the deaths was established: Tylenol. After the pill bottles were examined by medical professionals, it was determined that the capsules contained roughly 65 milligrams of potassium cyanide, more than the lethal dose for an adult male. When cyanide enters the body, it binds to a protein blocking the utilization of oxygen from breathing. While you're taking breaths, vital parts of your body, like your nervous system, experience rapid cell death from lack of oxygen. In about 60 seconds, everything but your heart has ceased to function, which can continue beating for around 3 minutes. Cyanide leaves a rusty red hue on the skin and the distinctive smell of bitter almonds on the breath. Once it had been determined that cyanide was the culprit, a nationwide broadcast urged citizens to stop taking Tylenol, explaining that it could possibly contain a deadly chemical. Understandably so, the public went into a frenzy. Poison control hotlines experienced an influx of calls from frightened individuals seeking comfort. Chillingly, the rule of thumb established by the hotlines was that if you were poisoned, you'd already be dead. Police cars patrolled the city streets with their loudspeakers warning the public about the crisis. Interestingly, the story quickly spread worldwide, becoming the 2nd most reported and circulated story ever, second only to the death of President John F. Kennedy. Once news spread, however, it sparked a strange wave of copycat killers. Suddenly, other medicine products were discovered to contain various dangerous chemicals, the most disturbing of which being acid placed in eyedroppers. Different law enforcement agencies quickly aggregated to create the Tylenol Task Force, a combination of efforts from the FBI, DEA, local and state police, and much more. The first obvious place to look was the factories where the Tylenol was produced. All bottles associated with the murders came from lot number MC 2880. However, due to a convoluted supply chain distribution center, it was determined that it could not have been tampering from the production side. If it wasn't a supply chain issue, what would prompt someone to commit such an evil act? Some speculated it was a cover-up of an initial murder to cover the tracks. Others suggested it might have been a disgruntled employee working in the production facility, and others assumed it was a simple serial killer. Eventually, The mad poisoner theory was created as a starting point for an investigation. It suggested that someone drove to local stores, took Tylenol from the store, replaced capsules, and returned the pills back to the shelves. It was estimated that such a crime would take roughly a day to commit. Johnson & Johnson quickly took action to remedy the situation. After a national recall of all Tylenol, they promptly destroyed $100 million worth to squash any residual fears from the public. Additionally, they established their own hotlines and even offered $100,000 for information on the killer. A short 6 weeks later, they introduced tamper-proof packaging for the first time, adding a total of 4 layers of security to their pills. This is widely regarded as the first incident of domestic terrorism in the United States of America. At the time, the USA was largely innocent to this type of horrific crime, and as such, made for an easy avenue of approach for murderers to take advantage of. The Tylenol task force suspected that the killer would be an adult male in his 20s or 30s, and would otherwise be an ordinary person. And so the search began for the mad poisoner. The first suspect named was Roger Arnold, a 49-year-old chemistry hobbyist. After a search of his home, police found 5 unregistered firearms and a book about how to kill people. His wife was quoted as saying she felt sick after taking Tylenol that was in the house. Eventually, he was cleared and the police moved on. Interestingly, Roger Arnold proved he was in fact capable of murder, though, when he was charged a short 6 months later with murder and served 15 years in prison. He was released in 1999. The second suspect was James Lewis. A letter showed up to Johnson & Johnson headquarters saying something along the lines of the following: "I've spent $50 so far, and I've killed 7 people, and I see no reason to stop. If you pay me $1 million, I'll end the killings." In the letter was a bank account number, which eventually led the police to Lewis. James Lewis was previously caught with a dismembered body in the attic, but wasn't charged on account of the search being illegal. He had a history of violence and crime, but it was determined that he couldn't have done this crime because he was in New York at the time of the murders. But why the letter? As it turns out, he was trying to frame his wife's former boss because he never gave his wife her last paycheck before leaving her job. While he admitted to writing the letter, he denied ever having any involvement with the murders. He served 10 years in prison for attempted extortion. Despite an exhaustive investigation, the identity of the Tylenol murder's perpetrator remains unknown. Multiple theories and suspects were considered over the years, but no definitive evidence has emerged to bring the culprit to justice. This lingering mystery serves as a chilling reminder of the potential for anonymous acts of violence and the need for constant vigilance in ensuring consumer safety. The Tylenol murders of 1982 forever changed the way society views product safety and prompted a paradigm shift in packaging and regulation. This heinous crime highlighted the vulnerability of consumers and propelled Johnson & Johnson, as well as the pharmaceutical industry as a whole, to take decisive steps to safeguard the public. The legacy of the Tylenol murders endures, reminding us of the crucial importance of comprehensive safety measures to protect the unsuspecting public from acts of malicious intent. If you enjoyed learning about this chilling mystery, please consider subscribing. Your support allows us to continue bringing important and interesting stories from history out and into the world. If you have something you'd like to see a video on, please leave your suggestion in the comment section. We're always on the lookout for interesting stories. Thank you.